Alright, so welcome to the introduction to Photoshop. Basically what this is going to be is just an introduction to the interface inside of Photoshop. I'll have a video tutorial later on to help you with your assignment. More or less what we're going to do is I'm just going to show you what the interface is, and we'll just kind of play around with it and just dabble around and just kind of familiarize ourselves with what it looks like in there. Okay, so when you first open up Photoshop, it's probably going to look something like this. Yours might look a little bit different. Kind of depends. It'll show whatever you've been working on last right here. And then you can see some options here. So generally you can click on Create New or Open. If you create New, it'll have all these preset options for you. Come on, Create New. There you go. Have all these preset options. We're not going to create a new image. We're just going to go ahead and just open up an image just because it's easier to work that way. So I'm going to close that. If you hit open, you can just open up the picture. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on open. And I'm going to grab this picture. So I put this picture on my site. So if you want to use this photo as well, you can. Or you can just use whatever photo. I'm not collecting this, so it's just for you to have something to mess around with. I don't care what you use. Okay? That's up to you. This is just a photo of my son, Casper, the ghost. Or maybe Powder. Powder. Maybe closer. But it's my son Charlie, but as you can see, you can kind of use him if you ever get lost. You can just shine him at the sun, and people will find you. So it's see, he looks a lot like me. The blue eyes and the blonde hair. It's like looking in a mirror. Okay, so it does make you question things. But so anyway, so this is my son. Let me show you generally what the interface is, and then we'll kind of go from there. Because everyone loves when people talk. So at the very top, basically, is the main menu. This is all the main items that you would see. So your file stuff is like you would typically see in most programs. You save, you export, you open, that sort of stuff that deals with the file in general. Edit is normally what you would see in other ones, so copy and pasting. Some other things it can do are the transform stuff. So meaning like if you have an image, you want to rotate it, right? Or you select an object or something, you can rotate it, you can scale it. It does that stuff as well. So yeah, that kind of thing. Preferences. Now, if you're on a Mac, they don't put the settings and preferences here. It'll actually be like an icon of Photoshop you click on, and then the settings preferences are there. So there's a little bit of a difference there. Image, basically everything with the image as a whole. So what that means is that you can do adjustments where it'll take the whole picture that you have here, not any like specific spot or selecting anything specifically, and it will do it across the whole thing. You can do like rotating, generally the sizing of the image, all right in image. Layer, deal with our layers. So we'll have layers here. So your picture is usually made up of multiple layers, one on top of the other. And when you have them all together, you end up with your final picture. And you'll see later on, we use that quite a bit. Type obviously deals with text. Don't use that much because there's other programs that honestly do type better than Photoshop. But it's nice that it has that power, but it's not super useful. Select deals when you select stuff. So let's say I have a selection here. Let's say I just grab this and I just hit delete. Okay. Oh crap, that's going to be content aware. This is going to look weird. Let's see what it does. I'm assuming it's going to be a peach block. Oh, that looks great. Okay. I was not anticipating it doing that, so let's delete it. Okay. So you see how this is a really hard edge, right? When I just removed that chunk. Okay. So I have different selection tools, ways of selecting. This is just the marquee select. When I go to select here, deals with everything that I can deal with selecting. So it will deal with unselecting, selecting everything, which is Control A, Command A. Deselecting is Control D or Command D. But it also adjusts the selection. So you can see I have modify, and I can feather this selection. So let's feather it like 20. Right? Now watch when I hit delete. See how it feathered, right? It fades it instead. So selections just basically generally deal with whatever you have selected. Filter are basically like effects that you throw on there. Now some of them are super effecty, where it's like make it look like paint, and it's kind of cheesy or half tone or things like that. Although you can use them in conjunction in interesting ways and come up with something new. But other ones are just kind of ones that you would use quite a bit, like blurring or sharpening an image. Those are basically in there. 3D deals with all of its 3D tools. You may not have known this, but you can actually bring in a 3D model and paint on it in here. You can even generate 3D models, not super well, but you can do it a little bit. That's dealing with that. Won't be using that much. We'll have like one class, I think, next section, but we don't use it too much. View deals with things that deal with the view, so zooming in, zooming out. If there's things on there that you don't like, for instance, let's say you don't like, say I can see the marquee, but it makes it hard, like if I'm working on it, there's an option. You can hit Control H, but you can also go to View and turn off extras here. It still is selected. Like if I hit delete, it's still there, but I can deal with things that are my selection. Like if you want rulers and things like that, all that stuff that deals with view, what you see here is there. Window basically controls all of your interface stuff. So if a panel's missing, this will bring it back up, right? So for instance, let's say I rip this off and I close it out. It's like, I lost my tools. All you gotta do is go to this, and then you'll see tools is right here. Check it back on. Boom, there it is. Now, let's say that you're just a terrible human being and you're just like, I like to grab things and throw them around, and I destroy everything I touch because you're like my dog. I hate you, JD. So let's say the interface is all messed up. You're like, it doesn't look right. The nice thing is, in this panel, and this is kind of like a safety thing, if you go to Window, you'll see Workspace, and you're going to see there's a whole collection of them, right? And basically what they've done is they've made these setup workspaces that are basically, it's all the stuff that you see on the screen here, but they're rearranged, or some tools will become available that aren't normally available, or another ones will be turned off, and they're useful if you're doing any one of these specific tasks, right? But what you can do is that right now, apparently we're in 3D, so I'm going to choose Essentials Default. But again, if I, let's say, rip this off and I get rid of it, and I'm like, if for some reason the thing gets messed up, you can go to Workspace, and then you just hit Reset Essentials, and that will reset the workspace and make it back to what it was. And so you can see there's actually the extra parts that I had not found very useful. That didn't want to take the whole thing back. You can also grab and move items. I meant to just grab this tab, and I'm going to hit the little X. I'm going to grab that tab and hit the little X. I don't find the library particularly useful. Come on, there we go. And you can make your own custom ones as well. Okay, and some of this is actually available over here. You can see there's like a quick workspace thing here. I don't know why we need a button and this. My guess is maybe they're going to remove this. Usually they like to put two things in places and then they'll take the other one away. It's like a transitional. Okay, so that's basically what that does. Help is here for help, but honestly, you're probably better off just Googling something very quickly. I'm sure that'll be easier for you. Okay, so next what we have is, I'm going to wait on this bar because this bar is going to be explained by this bar. So over here we have the toolbar, and basically these are all the things that with your mouse you will do them, meaning like you are doing it directly. You're not like pushing a function and it goes boom. These are things that like you do, like, you know, I can draw with a brush, right? I'm doing that to the image. I can grab this picture and set it to the side. Those are things that basically they're your tools, as thusly it's called the toolbar. A couple things with this. One is there's actually more tools here than you see. You can hit this little thing here, and it's not popping up. Is it going to pop up? I don't know. Okay. It should have popped up the tool panel thing, but it doesn't matter. Over here, though, if you see a little tiny little arrow thing, see how some of these have, most of them actually, like this one doesn't, but most of these other ones have these little tiny arrows. If you hold down, like click and hold, you'll see that there's another tool in there. So like there's this lasso, and then there's polygonal lasso, magnetic lasso. So I'm holding it, and then I go to like polygonal lasso and let go. So there's, I think they call them hidden tools, but basically they're just underneath and they're there as well. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of tools here, and then these are basically what we call your foreground and background color. Basically, they're just two colors that you readily have available. Some tools will use them both, but not many. And then underneath is quick mask mode. We'll cover that later. And then what's this one? I don't even know what that one is. I don't use that anyway. Okay. Now the bar up. So this is the toolbar. This here is the settings of whatever you have selected. So for instance, if I select the brush, you can see the alpha, which is the shape of the brush tip. You can see that I can change the opacity, which is the transparency of the brush. All the things that deal with the brush, right? If I select the fill, there's not that many settings there. Let's see, what's another one? You know, the lasso, you can tell like, oh, all these things. But basically, whatever tool I have, the the settings for the tool will show up in basically this toolbox up here. Okay, so the tool settings. So that is going to be contingent upon whatever's selected over here. Okay, I'm going to skip the middle area for a second and just go over here. So on the right, this actually, so this is pretty much always the same, what we just covered. Over on the right, though, this, depending on the workspace, this is one of those ones that they change quite a bit. You might find, I find that generally, I just leave it on this, because pretty much everything I need is right here. Okay, so, but these are basically, there's a bunch of little tabs and panels and all that stuff. So color is how I can select my color, and you can see it's switching my foreground color here. So this I find very useful. There's a properties panel. So for instance, if I were to draw, let's say, a shape here. Come on, rectangle, right? That's a shape, good. It'll actually, the properties will give me the stroke, which is the line, and the fill. So I can change the fill to like a color. Okay, so back off. Stroke, the fill. It tells me the width and the height of what I have there. This is particularly useful if you're doing like a vector drawing. Most of the other things you're not going to find as useful. But to be rather honest, I don't really use that hardly at all. So mostly we're going to keep it on adjustment panels. And what these do, they're basically, they will create layers down here. They will like basically, it does the same thing as I was saying up here. These, I don't know if I said it or not. These will do things where they affect the whole picture. These do the same thing, but they do it in a non-destructive way. We'll cover that later, but it just, they do it better. That's so basically I would just, you can keep it on either one of these. We're not going to use them a whole ton in the beginning here, but, and then the bottom one here, these basically deal with layers, channels, and paths. We're not going to really use paths. Channels are basically, like I can turn the red channel off or the green channel off. It's RGB image, so it's each basically spectrum of that. Not going to use that either, but we will be using layers. And layers basically are just the idea is, think that you have clear sheets of paper, one on top of the other one. The one that's on the bottom. So if I do multiple ones of these, right? So now I have a couple. If I have multiple ones, if I go on this one here, my stupid thing is in the way. So let's say I do one here, and I'll just paint. Come on, I'll just paint red. Make sure I'm on brush. Make it bigger, right? And then let's say I go to this one, and let's make it blue, or whatever. I don't care. Blah 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 blah. And then I'll go on this one, and I will make it actually blue. Yeah. Okay. So basically, you can see red's on top, and the person's on the bottom. But I can click and drag this to put it underneath that one. Now it's between the blue. So it's just, they're basically just sandwiched images, one on top of the other. All right, so that's what our layers do. And there's other things in here as well, but that's the lump sum of it. We use it quite a bit because what's nice about it is that, like, you're like, I don't like it. You can make a layer and then just throw it away, right? Just like my self-esteem. So that's that. And then in the middle here is basically just your picture, okay? It's just the work area is, I guess, what we call it. And so your image is going to be in here. Now you might have multiple pictures open, so I'll just do File, New, so you can see if I have another one. I'm just going to pick whatever. Boom, create. Okay. So what you'll notice is that you can have multiple tabs, right? So I have a tab here and a tab here. Okay. So, and you can rip these off and you can close them out and what have you. But so those are tabs. Now you might have a thing if you're on a Mac. You might be able to see your background. This workspace might actually like be a separate like floating window almost. The reason why it does that is because Windows have a thing where I find it annoying. So you might want to turn it off, but maybe not. But they have a thing where basically you can they call it application frame. So if you just go underneath, I think it's window, and then down on the bottom you'll see something that says application frame, and you can check it on or off. If you check it off, it will look like this, I think, or vice versa. But basically, it'll make it look like this or not like this. So if you're like mine doesn't look like yours, that's why, if you're using a Mac. PC is not an option anyway, and quite frankly, I turn it off because I find it more distracting than helpful. But just be aware that that's why that exists. All right. So now what I want to do is just kind of play around with the tools. But now that we've kind of covered what the interface does, I'm going to stop this video. In the next one, we're just going to whatever. All right, we're just going to play around. Okay. So I will see you in the next one.